Have you ever wondered how someone you know, be it a teacher, friend, family member, or politician, can court an agreement from an audience without presenting a logically sound argument? These people are adept at using logical fallacies in rhetoric. Now, a logical fallacy occurs in an argument when an error in reasoning happens, often to compare two unlike objects. Many people use logical fallacies as a method to persuade, which thus makes it a rhetorical device when used this way. Generally, we view rhetorical fallacies in a negative light because of their overall incorrectness and intent on deception. An arena where I believe this to be extremely rampant is in the political arena, which I intend on examining further. Before we get there, however, I'd like to bring to light some theorists that in turn brought fallacies to the forefront we see them today. So, I cite the work of Perelman and Ulbricht-Teiteke's The New Rhetoric, which was written in the mid-20th century. They set out to change how an argument is defined. Instead of an argument's effectiveness being gauged on how logical or reasonable it is, they state that an argument is effective if it courts an agreement from the audience, regardless of logic or reason. And rhetorical fallacies fall into this. Now, why would politicians use logical fallacies? Well, they realize that emotion trumps logic in most circumstances, and thus logical fallacies present conclusions that appeal to an emotional over logical side, which makes them rather effective. Although there's many types of fallacies, I'd only like to highlight the few that I believe to be the most prevalent in political society today. The first one I'd like to highlight is the ad hominem fallacy, which occurs when somebody attacks someone's character rather than their ideals or arguments. You can see this in this ad campaign by Barack Obama, which states that Mitt Romney is not the solution, he's the problem. Now, without any logical evidence to support this is a fallacy. You cannot just attack Romney's character and expect that. Now, the next fallacy I'd like to get into in the political world is the slippery slope fallacy, which happens when someone assumes that because one event has happened, a series of events or one single event are destined to occur after. You can see this in the Republican gun control laws today. They say that if gun control laws are enacted, then a government is destined or inevitable to become totalitarian or tyrannical. Because they don't have any evidence to support this makes it a fallacy. But because this is an emotional appeal, many people are on board with this. The last fallacy I'd like to highlight is the false analogy, which is just like how it sounds, comparing two unlike objects as if they were alike. To cite an example, I cite Carly Fiorina, the Republican primary candidate, who's a former corporate executive. She's criticized often for saying that we need to run a country like we run a business. In fact, she says, to be CEO, you must challenge the status quo, produce results, and build teams. And she says that's what America must do as well. Well, she fails to realize that a business and a country are not the same thing and therefore cannot be compared as such. Thus, a fallacy occurs. Now, we view fallacies in a negative light, and for good reason. I believe they've saturated the political world. And plagued them. But I'd like to step back for a second and analyze what I like to call a utopic political society. Now, this occurs when the new rhetoric proposed by Ulbricht-Teiteke and Perelman is thrown out, and the traditional way of arguing, which states that a logical argument is the best, is enacted. Now, instead of appealing to emotions and trying to court agreements, politicians would have to come up with the most logical and reasonable plans of action in order to be elected to power. Because of this, only the politicians with the most efficient strategy, the most effective strategies and logical strategies would be elected, and efficiency, I believe, would skyrocket. Now, this obviously isn't a paradigm that we could ever see, but I believe that this utopic political society highlights areas that are being plagued by rhetorical fallacies in politics today. I believe that because of logical fallacies, the American political system is headed down a dark and ominous road. Thank you.